Don't stop. I want this, the Apache girl cried with joy as the cowboy held her inside his cabin. The night wind slammed against the old cabin as an Apache girl clung to a lone cowboy, trembling after a danger she barely escaped. The moment he wrapped his coat around her shaking shoulders, everything changed because she wasn't crying for fear, but for the first peace she'd felt in years. But just as the cabin warmed with safety, a shadow crossed the window, a reminder that someone out there wanted her back. What secret could make a girl beg for the safety of a stranger? And why does the world outside want to tear that comfort away? A soft thud hit the cabin door before dawn, light, uncertain, like someone afraid to knock harder. The cowboy froze with his hand on the fire iron, listening. Outside, the wind dragged dust across the step, rattling the loose boards. Another sound followed, barely louder than a breath, a weak gasp trying to stay quiet. He opened the door a crack. A small figure swayed in the cold, wrapped in torn cloth, rainwater running down her hair. An Apache girl, exhausted, shaking, eyes wide with both hope and dread. She didn't speak, just lifted a trembling hand and pressed it against the doorframe, as if asking permission to stay standing. He stepped aside without a word. She stumbled in, collapsing near the hearth. He crouched beside her, draping his coat over her shoulders. Her fingers seized it desperately, knuckles white, as though the warmth itself might vanish if she let go. She tried to speak, but only a broken whisper escaped her lips. Nothing he could understand, yet everything he could feel. He moved slowly, setting a tin cup of water near her hands. She stared at it for a long moment, as if deciding whether it was real. Then she drank, shaking through every swallow. Outside, thunder rolled across the valley. Inside, the girl flinched. He lowered his voice. "You're safe here." Her eyes filled, not with fear, but with a kind of stunned relief. She leaned forward, clutching his coat tighter, whispering something that sounded like a plea not to be left alone, a plea not to be sent back into the storm, a plea to let this moment last. When she spoke again, it was stronger, still broken, but clear enough to understand the meaning behind every breath. "Don't stop. I want this. Not the man, not the closeness, but the safety, the first she'd been given in far too long." He steadied her, slow and careful, guiding her to sit by the fire. The cabin crackled with heat, but the tension in the air was sharper than frost. Each time the wind hit the shutters, she startled, eyes darting to the door. Someone, or something, had driven her here, and whatever hunted her had not given up. The cabin fire hissed as a log collapsed, sending sparks drifting through the dim room. The Apache girl sat wrapped in the cowboy's coat, her hands still trembling from cold and fear. Outside, the storm hammered the roof, each gust making the lantern sway on its hook. She watched the flame, as if it were the only solid thing left in the world. The cowboy crouched beside her again, moving slow so she wouldn't startle. "Drink more," he said softly. Her fingers tightened around the cup. "I'm trying. You're safe now." Her eyes flicked to the door. "Storms don't scare me." "Then what does—" She didn't answer. He grabbed a blanket from the bunk and wrapped it around her shoulders. She clutched the edges, fighting a shiver. "You ran far," he said. She nodded. "Farther than you think." The wind slammed hard against the shutters. She flinched again. "Easy," he murmured. "It's only wind." "Wind carries riders," she whispered. He studied her. Dust on her boots, torn cloth, rope marks on her wrists. Something had chased her through the dark, and it wasn't the weather. He crouched lower, looking into her eyes. "Who follows you?" "Not who," she said quietly. "What they want." A faint thunder rolled across the valley. She hugged herself. "I shouldn't have come," she muttered. "You had nowhere else," he replied. Her voice cracked. "They said I belonged to them." He stiffened. "Who said that?" "Men with papers," she whispered. "Papers I never saw." Courteous, legal, organized, dangerous. He sat back on his heels. "What kind of papers?" They spoke with a badge, said the ranch signed something. "What kind of something?" She shook her head. "I didn't understand." The cowboy's jaw tightened. "Did they take you?" "Yes." She swallowed. "But I escaped when the storm came." Another shiver ran through her as she remembered. They argued, she said. Letters on a table. My name spoken like a price. You heard wrong, he said gently. I know what a price sounds like. He stood, ran a hand through his damp hair, and paced once, listening to the rain. No badge can claim a person, he muttered. They think they can, she said. They showed papers to each other, smiled. What did you do? I ran until my lungs burned. She lifted the coat closer. Then I found your cabin. He knelt again, lowering his voice. You're safe here, he repeated. I need to believe that, she whispered, just for one night. A log cracked in the fire, making her jerk. He steadied her with a hand on her shoulder, slow, gentle, careful. She drew a deep breath, then another. Don't stop, she murmured. I want this. The warmth, the feeling I'm not hunted. He nodded. You're not alone tonight. For the first time, her breath eased. A small victory. She leaned back slightly, eyes softening. You don't know what they said, she murmured. What? That I owe them years. That I was part of a trade. A trade, she nodded once. A promise someone made before I was born. He stiffened. The valley held stories like that. Old debts, old prejudices, twisted into law by the wrong hands. Did they show a warrant? He asked. A letter, she said, sealed, red mark. I ran before they read it. A legal claim. A dangerous one. Lightning flashed bright enough to bleach the walls. She curled deeper into the blanket. Storm's close, he said. Storms follow me, she whispered. No, he said firmly. Men follow you. Storm's just weather. She blinked, almost surprised by the certainty in his voice. He stood again, crossed the cabin, and slid the heavy bar across the door. The thud echoed through the small space. She watched him, relief and fear tangled in her expression. Someone might come, she said. I know. They'll use the badge first. I know that too. He checked the rifle by the window, then set it down without loading it. Legal trouble came before bullets. That was the rule out here. But he didn't like the feel of it. He turned back to her. Why my cabin? Light, she said. Just a small one. Enough to hope. You sure? She nodded. It felt safe. The cowboy looked at her a long moment. Then she whispered, Will you keep the door closed? Yes, no matter what they say. Yes, even if they show papers. He hesitated. She saw it, and fear crept back into her eyes. He stepped closer. I won't hand you over, he said quietly. Storm or badge. She closed her eyes in raw relief. Another crack of thunder shook the cabin. A moment later, 3 slow, deliberate knocks sounded on the door. Not the wind, not the storm. Someone standing outside. Her eyes flew open. The cowboy froze. The knocks came again, slow, steady, official, a badge knock. He reached for the lantern, lifting it just enough to cast light across the door. A voice called out through the rain, Open up. We need to speak to the girl inside. The girl's breath came shallow, eyes fixed on the door. The cowboy held up one hand. Wait, then moved silently toward the wall beside the frame. The lantern in his grip threw long shadows, making the rough boards look like a row of watching faces. The knocking came a third time. Open up, the voice repeated. By county order. The girl's fingers dug into the blanket. Her whisper barely rose above the rain. They found me. Stay quiet, the cowboy murmured. They'll break it, she said. Not yet. He drew the bar back halfway, leaving the door closed. Who's there? He called. Deputy, the voice answered. And a man with a claim. What kind of claim? Lawful, the deputy said. Open the door. The girl's shoulders shook once. You said legal first, she whispered. So they'll talk, he replied. Talking buys time. He lifted the bar the rest of the way and opened the door just enough for the rain to rush in around him. 2 figures stood on the step, one with a badge on his chest, hat dripping. The other in a long coat, dry despite the storm, clutching a leather folder. The deputy tipped his chin. Evening, he said. Long ride. The cowboy blocked the doorway. Stormy night for visits. Business couldn't wait. the man in the coat replied. The cowboy's gaze dropped to the folder. "What's in there?" "Papers," the man said. "Agreements, signatures." "Not mine," the cowboy answered. Behind him, the girl shifted on the stool. The deputy's eyes flicked past the cowboy's shoulder. "You sheltering someone?" he asked. "Sheltering from the storm," the cowboy said. The man in the coat spoke next, voice smooth. "She belongs to a ranch farther south. I'm here for return." The girl flinched at the word belongs. The cowboy didn't move. "People don't belong," he said. The man smiled thinly. "Debt says otherwise." The deputy cleared his throat. "Let us in," he said. "We'll talk inside." "Warmer that way." The cowboy hesitated. Letting them cross the threshold meant giving them ground. Refusal meant looking guilty. He opened the door wider, but did not step aside fully. "You stay near the fire," he told the girl. "Don't stand." She nodded once, gripping the blanket tighter. The two men entered, bringing wet air and mud. The deputy wiped his boots carefully, as if the courtesy proved he meant no harm. The man with the folder didn't bother. He took in the scene with one slow sweep. Single bunk, rough table, one frightened girl wrapped in another man's coat. "Looks cozy," he remarked. The girl dropped her gaze. The cowboy's jaw clenched. The deputy moved closer to the hearth, palms out to the flames. "Cold night to be riding alone," he said gently to the girl. She stared at the floor. "I wasn't alone. You ran," the man with the folder cut in. "From an employer." "From a buyer," she whispered. The deputy's eyes flicked to his companion. "Is that true?" he asked quietly. The man shrugged. "Paper doesn't use that word." He opened the folder and pulled out a folded document, seal unbroken, edges muddy from travel. "This is the contract," he said. "Work arrangement, signed by the ranch, approved by judge." He laid it on the table with the care of a card player showing a winning hand. The cowboy did not touch it. "She ever see it?" he asked. The girl shook her head. "They just told me." "Told you what?" the deputy asked. "That I owed them my life," she said. "For food, for shelter, for breathing their air." Silence pressed close. The deputy looked troubled now. "Work contracts don't sound like that," he muttered. The man with the folder smiled again, thinner than before. "Desperate folk hear what they fear," he said. "The paper is clear." He tapped the seal. "Ranch covers her costs. She works 8 years. Simple." The cowboy folded his arms. "And if she refuses?" The man lifted one brow. "Then she runs." "As she did. But the law follows." The girl's voice cut in, small but sharp. "I never agreed." "You were taken in," the man said. "Fed, clothed, housed. That is agreement enough." The cowboy stepped closer to the table. "That's not how agreement works," he said. "Judge disagrees," the man replied. "Judge stamped this himself." He flipped the document over, revealing a second page. At the bottom, a small, familiar mark bled through the paper, a rough X scratched in dried ink. The girl's breath hitched. "They forced that," she whispered. The man shook his head. "Witnessed by 2 men, legal and binding." The deputy shifted uneasily. "You were there?" he asked. "I was," the man said. "I held the ink." The cowboy's hand curled into a fist. "You held her wrist too." The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "The law cares about marks, not feelings." A log popped in the fire. The girl flinched again. The deputy scratched his jaw. "Why chase her yourself?" he asked. "Could have sent riders." The man's gaze slid briefly to the girl. "Rancher wants this settled cleanly," he said. "No fuss, no blood, just paper honored." The cowboy's voice dropped. "She's not stock," he said. "She's labor," the man answered. "Ranch paid dearly. They won't lose face." The girl lifted her head, eyes burning. "I'm not a debt," she said. "To them, you are balance," he replied. The deputy looked between them all, caught between badge and conscience. The cowboy spoke again, slow and steady. "She came here under my roof," he said. "That means something." "To you," the man replied. "To the law, too," the cowboy insisted. "Cabin's private. You can't just drag her out." The man opened his mouth, then paused. From the folder he drew a smaller paper, folded tight, stained from travel. "This," he said, "answers that." He slid it across the table toward the cowboy. The cowboy frowned. "What is it?" "Order from the judge," the man said. "Directed to this cabin." The deputy stiffened. "I haven't seen that." "You will," the man replied. The cowboy picked up the paper, but did not unfold it. The seal was the same deep red, pressed hard. His name was written across the back. The girl stared. "They knew you," she whispered. He felt the weight of her words even before he broke the seal. When he opened the letter, the firelight caught the first line. Color drained from his face. The deputy stepped closer. "What does it say?" The cowboy swallowed, throat dry. The letter did not just mention the girl. It mentioned an old loan, a winter long past, and one quiet promise he'd made when he was desperate. The judge's order ended with a single line: "Failure to comply will cost you more than land." The deputy looked at him, waiting. The girl's eyes begged him to say no. Outside, over the dying storm, another sound rose, the distant thunder of more riders approaching the ridge. The riders' rumble faded in and out with the storm, as if the thunder itself had hooves. The girl's breath caught, her shoulders rising toward her ears. The cowboy folded the judge's letter shut, hands steady but pale. The man with the folder noticed. "Hard truth, isn't it?" he murmured. The cowboy didn't answer. The deputy frowned. "What's written there?" "Private matter," the cowboy said. "Not tonight," the man replied. "Not with law involved." The cowboy set the letter on the table, one finger holding it down as if it might blow away. He looked at the girl. "Stay seated," he whispered. Her voice trembled. "They want you, too." He didn't deny it. The deputy stepped closer. "Let's settle this calm," he said. "No trouble." The girl wrapped the blanket tighter. "Trouble follows them." The man's lips curved. "Your trouble runs deeper than she knows." The cowboy shot him a warning look. "Mind your tone." "I'm minding the law," the man replied. "Law says both of you owe something." The fire crackled sharply, filling the silence. The cowboy pulled out a chair for the deputy. "You sit," he said. "Why?" "So you don't think I'm reaching for that rifle." The deputy hesitated, then sat, palms open. The girl's eyes darted between them. "Why riders?" she whispered. "They expect resistance," the deputy muttered. "From her?" the cowboy asked. "From you," the deputy said softly. Another gust of wind rattled the shutters. Dust spilled from a crack in the rafters. The man with the folder tapped the judge's seal. "Open rebellion isn't wise," he said. "Refusing a flawed order isn't rebellion," the cowboy replied. "You think the judge cares about your opinion?" "I think he cares about truth," the man snorted. "Truth doesn't ride out in storms. Paper does." The girl swallowed hard. "Why my old winter?" the cowboy asked quietly, eyes on the letter. "You begged for help," the man answered. "Someone answered. I paid that debt, not all of it." The deputy leaned forward, voice low. "Explain the letter." "No," the cowboy said. "Not until I know her fate." The girl looked at him with wide, desperate eyes. "Please," she whispered, "don't let them take me." He steadied her with a gentle touch on her shoulder, the small act of care the storm kept trying to crush. The deputy's jaw tightened. "You claim she ran from a contract," he said to the man. "9 riders saw it," the man replied. 4 elders, too. She says forced mark. She says many things." The cowboy's voice cut in, sharp as a knife. "She's shaking because of you, not weather." "Fear makes stories wild," the man answered calmly. Then hoofbeats again. Closer. Slower. The girl's breath hitched. The deputy shifted in his chair. "That's more than 2 riders." "3, the cowboy murmured. "Maybe 4. The man's smile returned. "My escort. For safety." "For whose safety?" the cowboy asked. "Lawmen," the man replied. "Paper needs teeth." The girl shook her head violently. "They'll chain me," she whispered. "They'll lock me in the wagon." The deputy winced. "Chains aren't— They used them before," she snapped. The cowboy tensed. "Is that true?" he asked the man. "Restraint was necessary," the man said simply. "For labor." "For quiet?" The cowboy stood abruptly, chair scraping. "You won't bind her again," he said. The deputy raised a hand. Easy. She's not livestock, the cowboy growled. The man shrugged. Court will decide. Not you. Lightning flashed bright across the window. For a split heartbeat, the riders appeared as silhouettes cresting the ridge, wide-brimmed hats, rifles slung, horses slick with rain. The girl's voice broke. Please, no. The cowboy crouched beside her. You breathe, he whispered. I'm here. Tears welled in her eyes. They'll take me. No, he said. Not while I stand. The deputy's voice was low. You make this hard, friend. You make it harder, the cowboy replied. The man with the folder stepped forward. Let's end this, he said. Sign the release. Hand her over. Your own debt will settle in time. The cowboy glared. You think I trade a person for my land? Survival requires choices. The girl shivered violently. I ran for freedom, she whispered. The man answered without emotion. Freedom isn't in your contract. The cowboy slammed his hand on the table. Contracts don't own souls. No, the man said softly, but they own bodies. Something snapped in the cowboy's stare. Not rage, but resolve. A decision forming. The rider's hooves reached the yard. The deputy stood slowly. You don't want this fight, he warned. You don't know what I want, the cowboy answered. The girl choked out, Don't open that door. He squeezed her hand once. I won't, he said. The man with the folder exhaled with annoyance. Then you force my hand. A fist hammered the door 3 times, heavy and final. The latch jumped. The deputy reached for his badge. The girl reached for the cowboy's coat. The cowboy reached for the lantern. A deep voice outside boomed through the storm. By judge's order, open this cabin or we break it down. The cabin floor vibrated with each strike on the door. The girl's breath quickened, hands twisting in the blanket. The cowboy moved between her and the lawman, shoulders squared, lantern in one hand, steady as a drawn line. The deputy held up both palms. Don't escalate, he warned. They already did, the cowboy replied. The man with the folder stepped closer. Open it, he said, or they will. The cowboy didn't move. Another slam rattled the hinges. Last warning, a voice thundered outside. The deputy flinched. They came with full authority, he muttered. The cowboy shot him a look. Authority bends, he said. Fear breaks. The man with the folder smirked. You've mistaken your leverage. The girl whispered. Please. No chains. The cowboy turned toward her. No one's chaining you. They did before, she whispered. Not here, he said. The deputy shifted uneasily. Let me speak to them, he said. They won't hear you, the girl murmured. They'll hear badge, the deputy insisted. The cowboy opened the door's inner latch a crack. Not enough to admit an inch of bodies, but enough for the deputy to slip through. Go, the cowboy whispered. The deputy nodded, ducked out, and pulled the door shut behind him. Voices flared outside at once. Rain, boots, horse snorts, angry argument carried through the boards. The girl pressed her ear to the blanket. They're angry, she whispered. Let them waste breath, the cowboy muttered. She shook her head. They brought the big man. How do you know? He rides louder, she said softly. A faint shiver worked up the cowboy's spine. Describe him, he said. Tall, she whispered. Deep voice. Smells of smoke. The cowboy's eyes narrowed. You've met him. In a yard, she said. He guarded the wagon. What wagon? The one they put me in before. He knelt, leveling his voice. Did he hurt you? No, she said, but he watched like he wanted to. Outside, the deputy's voice rose. Let me speak. A deeper voice drowned him out. He shelters fugitives. Door opens now. The cowboy clenched his jaw. They're pushing him, he said. They push until someone breaks, the girl murmured. Not me, he replied. The man with the folder paced the cabin like he already owned it. You're making this worse, he said. I'm making it fair, the cowboy answered. Fair, the man laughed. Paper binds her, paper binds you. What debt ties me? The cowboy asked. You know, the man said. Say it. You signed for winter grain, the man replied calmly. 6 years ago. I repaid in labor. Interest accrued. The cowboy shook his head. No man lives long enough to pay interest like that. That's why contracts stay clean, the man said. Clean? the cowboy growled. Clean, the man said. She returns. You work your due. The judge stays pleased. The girl's voice cracked. Please, don't let them take me. He placed a hand over hers, slow and steady. I won't, he said. A sudden silence fell outside. Then, the deputy shouted, Stop, don't force it! A boot hit the door hard, splintering a plank. The girl gasped. The cowboy reached for the heavy iron poker by the fire, gripping it tight. You intend to fight law? The man asked. I intend to keep a promise, the cowboy answered. To who? To anyone no one else protects. The girl wiped her cheek. They'll beat him, she whispered. They'll try, the cowboy said. Another voice outside boomed, a deep, gravelled tone dripping with authority. Break it! Judge's order stands. The girl froze. That's him, she whispered. The big rider? Yes. More boots crowded the porch. Mud scraped. Metal clinked. The deputy's voice strained, desperate. Wait! There's no violence inside. The cowboy stepped backward, placing himself fully between the girl and the door. Listen to me, he whispered. Her eyes lifted, wide with fear. Do you stay behind the hearth? Stay low. She nodded, trembling. The man with the folder slid toward the window, peering out. They're serious, he murmured. No, the cowboy said. They're scared. Of what? Truth, he said. Outside, the deep voice ordered, Ram it! A thick wooden beam thudded into place, braced by hands. The girl's whisper cracked. They'll crush us. No, the cowboy said. You can't stop them. The man spat. I don't have to, the cowboy replied. He moved the lantern behind the table, angling the light just enough to cast a long shadow across the front wall. The girl frowned. What is that? A delay, he whispered. How? Another shout outside. Hit it! The beam slammed the door. Wood shrieked. Dust rained from the rafters. The cowboy leaned close to the girl. When they break in, he whispered, don't look at them. Look at me. Why? So they don't see your fear. Another strike. The hinges groaned. The deputy yelled, Hold on, she's not listed as property. What? The cowboy muttered. The man with the folder stiffened. Who told you that? He snapped. The deputy shouted again, The contract lists no mark, no witness, no seal. The beam halted mid-swing. A stunned silence fell. Rain hammered. Wind howled. No one moved. Then the big voice roared, Bring me that contract now. The man with the folder grabbed for the document on the table, but the cowboy's hand slammed down on it first. Hard. The girl's breath stopped. The storm paused. The door hinges creaked under the weight of judgment, and the man outside bellowed, Open or we burn the cabin! The words burn the cabin hung in the air like smoke from a dying wick. The girl's fingers clutched the blanket until her knuckles blanched. The cowboy didn't blink. Outside, boots scraped against soaked planks. Someone spat. Another muttered, Judge said it. Fire if needed. The deputy's voice cracked through the storm. No, you don't torch a man's home. He shelters a runner, the deep voice replied. He shelters a person, the deputy shot back. That's for the court to decide. The girl pressed closer to the hearth. They'll burn us, she whispered. Not on my watch, the cowboy murmured. The man with the folder leaned in, eyes narrow. You don't understand the reach of that voice, he said. I understand bullies, the cowboy replied. This isn't bullying, the man said. It's consequence. For who? For anyone standing in the way. A gust of wind slammed the shutters. The lantern swayed, shadows stretching across the walls like long, reaching hands. The cowboy held the contract tighter. Deputy! He shouted through the door. Tell them the truth, the deputy yelled back. I am telling them. Louder, the cowboy barked. They don't care, the deputy answered. Not until the big man sees it. The man with the folder smirked. He'll see what I show him. The cowboy stepped closer. You show him lies. I show him seals, the man answered. And forged marks, the cowboy growled. Proof still stands, the man whispered. It stands until someone breaks it. The girl trembled. They've burned cabins before, she whispered. When? The cowboy asked. A winter ago. Why? Another girl ran, she said. They blamed the house. His jaw tightened. Outside, the riders shifted restlessly. Metal clinked. Rain hammered harder. The deep voice barked, "Prepare the torches." The deputy snapped, "No, not without proper cause." "You want cause?" the voice thundered. "I want fairness," the deputy shot back. The cowboy whispered to the girl, "Move behind the stone hearth. Stay low." Her breath hitched. "If they burn—" "They won't," he said. "How do you know?" "Because I'm still breathing." She crawled behind the hearthstones, clutching the blanket around her shoulders. The firelight cast her shadow long and thin against the wall. She looked small, too small for the weight the world had placed on her. The man with the folder watched her hide. "Kindness won't save her," he said softly. "Cruelty won't save you," the cowboy replied. Outside, a match scratched. A single faint hiss cut through the storm. The deputy shouted, "Drop that!" A scuffle followed, boots sliding, bodies bumping into the porch rails. The cowboy's pulse hammered, but his voice stayed firm. "Deputy, who carried the contract before you?" "A ranch hand," the deputy yelled. "Name him," the cowboy demanded. "I didn't see his face." "Then check the seals," the cowboy shouted. "I did," the deputy replied. "It's wrong." The porch went silent. The deep voice growled, "Wrong how?" "No witness mark," the deputy said. "We had two," the man inside insisted. "Then why aren't they listed?" the deputy fired back. The man with the folder stiffened. The cowboy leaned in. "Tell him," he murmured. The man said nothing. A second voice outside chimed in, fearful, uncertain. "Say's right, boss, and there's no mark." "Don't speak unless I ask," the deep voice snapped. "But the page—" "I said silence." The cowboy glanced toward the girl. She whispered through the stones, "Why lie for me?" "I don't lie," he answered softly. "Then why risk everything?" "Because someone should." Another crack of thunder rolled overhead, followed by a long moment of uneasy quiet. Then the deep voice barked again, cold, decisive. "New plan. If the door won't open, we take the roof." The girl gasped. "They'll come from above," she whispered. The cowboy nodded slowly. "They want surprise." The man with the folder swallowed hard. "That's extreme." "They said burn," the cowboy murmured. "This is gentler." The girl shivered violently behind the hearth. "They'll drop in," she whispered. "Yes," he said. "Can you stop them?" "No," he said. "But I can slow them." He lifted the lantern, dimmed the wick, and moved it to the far corner. The room fell into deeper shadow, the firelight low and trembling. The roof creaked. Boots scraped overhead. Rain dripped through a loose shingle. "Keep still," he whispered. The girl's breaths came tiny, broken. A muffled voice above called, "He's below us now." Another answered, "Cut through the ridge beam." The cowboy reached for the iron poker and placed himself directly under the ridge. "Get away from the hearth," he whispered. "No," she said, "it's safer." "I stay with you." "Please." "I stay," she repeated. The first axe strike hit the roof. Splinters rained down. A second blow followed, shaking the whole cabin. The man with the folder backed away, pale. "They'll kill someone." "They don't care," the cowboy said. The deputy yelled from outside, "Stop, you'll collapse it." "We collapse him," the deep voice replied. Another strike. The roof groaned. Rain poured through a widening crack, hissing in the fire. The girl whispered, "They'll crush us." "Not if we move," the cowboy said. "Where?" He pointed toward the root cellar trap door under the table. "Down!" As he reached for it, a final blow split the ridge beam wide open. A boot crashed through. Mud and splinters flew. A huge figure dropped halfway into the cabin, and the girl let out a tiny, broken cry, recognizing the silhouette. The cowboy looked up, iron poker raised. The deep voice growled down through the hole, "I found you." The massive boot hung through the ceiling like a threat carved from the storm itself. Splinters rained down, scattering across the table and the floor. The girl pressed both hands over her mouth, shaking so hard the blanket slipped from her shoulders. The cowboy steadied himself beneath the hole. "Back up," he warned. A low growl answered, "You can't hide her." The man with the folder stumbled away from falling debris. "This isn't what I agreed to," he shouted. The deep voice above rumbled. "Law requires action. Law requires restraint," the man snapped. "You lost restraint," the voice replied, "when you let her run." The cowboy jabbed the poker upward. "Get out of my roof!" A second boot slammed down through the breach, knocking the poker aside. The girl cried out softly, "Don't fight him." "Why?" the cowboy murmured. "He likes fighting," she whispered. The deputy's desperate voice rose from outside. "Stop!" "Roof falls. Someone dies." "Then make him yield," the deep voice answered. The cowboy stepped between the falling debris and the girl. "You breathe," he whispered. "Stay low." She reached for his coat again, gripping it as if it were a lifeline. "Don't let him take me," she whispered. "I won't," he said. The man with the folder watched the exchange with sharp eyes. "You're protecting her like kin," he said. The cowboy didn't answer. "You can't," the man added. "How you can't own her either," the cowboy replied. Another crack split the roof as the large man above forced more weight downward. A fist the size of a hammer pushed through next, gripping a board and ripping it aside. The girl whimpered. "He used that hand before," she whispered. "For what?" the cowboy asked. "To drag me," she said softly. "By the arm." The cowboy's grip tightened around the poker. "You won't drag her again," he said. The man above laughed. "She's property." "She's living," the cowboy snapped. "She's a debt," the voice said, "and debts return." The deputy yelled again. "You can't claim debt without proof." "We have proof," the voice thundered. "You had forged proof," the deputy shot back. A ripple of murmurs passed over the riders outside. Inside, the man with the folder stiffened. "You're making this worse," he hissed at the cowboy. "You forged her mark," the cowboy growled. The man flinched. "You forged mine too," the cowboy added. The folder slipped from the man's hands, spilling papers across the floor. Rainwater dripped through the roof hole, soaking the edges. The girl whispered, "They lied about everything." "Yes," the cowboy said. The large man above thrust an arm down through the breach, reaching blindly for anything he could grab. The cowboy swung the poker and struck the wrist. A roar of pain shook the rafters. "You just made this violent," the man above bellowed. "You made it first," the cowboy replied. Outside, horses shifted nervously. One rider shouted, "Boss, this ain't legal anymore." "It's justice," the deep voice snapped. The deputy yelled back, "No, this is force, illegal force." Another blow shook the cabin, this time from the porch, not the roof. Someone rammed the door again. The man with the folder panicked. "They're going to bring it down." The cowboy pushed him aside. "Move away." "I won't die for this," the man shouted. "Then stay still," the cowboy said. The girl peered from behind the hearthstones. "They want you too," she whispered. "I know," he said. "Because of that letter." "Yes." "What did it say?" "Later," he murmured. A rope suddenly dropped through the roof hole. Thick, coarse. The noose-shaped end dangled inches above the table. The girl's breath froze. "They're using rope now," she whispered. "Why?" "To drag someone out," she said. The cowboy grabbed the rope before the man above could lower it. He pulled hard. The rider above stumbled, boots slipping. The poker clattered as it fell. Rain poured harder through the breach. The man above shouted, "Hold him! Hold the line!" Multiple boots shifted above the rafters. More weight pressed down. The rope tightened in the cowboy's grip. The deputy outside screamed, "Stop! You're violating court process." The deep voice answered, "Court commands removal." The cowboy shouted back, "Show me the seal. Show me the order." Silence. Only wind. Only rain. Only the rope trembling with tension. Then the deep voice growled, "It burned in the storm." The cowboy froze. The deputy shouted, "You lost the court order." "It was ruined," the deep voice snapped. "Then you have no authority," the deputy roared. A wave of shocked muttering rose outside. The girl pressed her forehead to the hearthstones. "They act anyway," she whispered. "Yes," the cowboy said. "Why?" "Pride," he murmured. The roof above groaned dangerously. Suddenly, a smaller, softer voice outside called out, trembling, "Boss, the judge is comin'." Everything stopped. Rain, boots, voices, breath. The girl looked up, eyes wide. "Judge," The cowboy's expression darkened. "They brought him." A lantern glow appeared through the cracks in the shutters, getting brighter, closer, steady. A carriage rattled up the ridge. Riders moved aside fast. A stern voice, old, cold, and sharp, cut through the storm. "Everyone stand back. I'll enter the cabin myself." The storm seemed to quiet the moment the judge's voice cut through it, as if the clouds themselves were holding their breath. The girl shrank deeper behind the hearthstones. "The judge," she whispered. "He's worse." The cowboy lowered his voice. "Why?" "He never looks at people," she murmured. "Only papers." Heavy boots stepped onto the porch. Measured, slow, no anger in them, which somehow made the sound more dangerous. The deputy's voice rose, strained. "Judge, sir, the contract is wrong. No witness marks." "I'll see it," the judge replied. Inside, the man with the folder scrambled to gather the scattered papers. "They're wet," he hissed. The cowboy stopped him with a hand on the table. "No more hiding." Outside, the deep voice growled, "Judge, he attacked my man." "Your man broke a roof," the judge said flatly. "He resisted lawful order." "Order you failed to present," the judge replied. The porch fell silent. The girl whispered, "He scares even them." The cowboy nodded once. "Good." A soft knock, almost polite, tapped the door. "Open," the judge said. The cowboy hesitated. The girl grabbed his coat from behind. "Don't," she whispered. He turned to her. "If I don't open, they'll force it again." "You'll be alone," she whispered. "No," he said. "You're here." He unbarred the door and stepped aside, blocking the judge's view of her. The judge entered like he carried the storm inside him. Tall, coat dripping, hat firm on his head. His eyes swept the cabin without blinking, taking in every detail. The broken roof, the torn contract, the shaking girl hidden behind the hearth, the man with the folder trembling, the cowboy standing between all of it. "Close the door," the judge ordered. The cowboy obeyed. A moment later, another voice outside whispered, "He's really going in alone." "Boss is furious," someone muttered. "Quiet," the deep voice growled. "Wait for my call." The judge removed his gloves one finger at a time. "Bring me the contract," he said. The man with the folder quickly held it out. The judge ignored him. "I said," he repeated slowly, "bring me the contract." The cowboy placed the document on the table. The judge approached it like a doctor approaching an open wound. He unfolded the first page, traced the lines, lifted it to the firelight, then turned to the deputy. "You saw no marks?" "None," the deputy said. "You saw this man's mark." The deputy shook his head. "I didn't see any mark at all. No one signed." The judge's voice hardened. "Then who claims the seal?" The man with the folder cleared his throat. I brought it from the ranch." "And who sealed it?" the judge asked. "The foreman." "Did he sign it?" "Yes." "Where?" The man's face drained of color. I don't know." The judge slammed the contract down. "Forged," he declared. The girl gasped softly. The man with the folder stammered, "No, I carried it exactly." "You carried a lie," the judge said. The cowboy let out a slow breath. The girl's eyes filled with fragile hope. But the judge lifted a hand. "I'm not done." He pointed to the cowboy. "You," he said, "stand here." The cowboy obeyed, stepping closer. "You owe winter grain," the judge continued. "Yes," the cowboy said. "How you signed a promise to repay in labor." "I worked it." "You worked most," the judge said. "Not all." The girl's hope cracked. "What does that mean?" she whispered. The cowboy didn't look back. The judge spoke evenly. "You owe one more season. After that, you're free." The cowboy nodded. "I'll work it." "Good," the judge said. "Then that debt is settled." The man with the folder let out a shaky breath. "Then she returns," he said quickly. "No," the judge answered coldly. The entire cabin froze. "She is not tied to his debt," the judge continued. "She owed nothing. She owes no one." The girl's hand flew to her mouth. Then, "You are free," the judge said. Her knees almost buckled. The cowboy's shoulders exhaled tension like air leaving a wound, but the judge raised a finger. "I said you are free," he repeated, "but you are in danger." The girl swallowed. From who? The judge looked at the man with the folder. From people who profit when no one questions paper. The man stumbled backward. I did nothing. You forged a claim, the judge said. I followed orders. So does a wolf, the judge replied. A shout outside. Judge, we heard yelling, the deep voice again. Boss, want us to pull him out? No, the judge barked. He turned back to the cowboy. You can protect her tonight, he said. But at dawn. This isn't over. The cowboy stepped forward. What's coming? The judge's eyes darted to the broken roof. When word spreads that the contract failed, he said, the ranch won't accept the shame. The girl's voice trembled. They'll chase me. They'll chase anyone who knows, the judge replied. The cowboy's jaw set hard. Then what now? The judge leaned in, whispering, You run? The girl froze. Both of you, the judge said. The cowboy tightened his fists. Where? North Ridge, the judge whispered. There's a safe outpost. Another rider outside shouted, Judge, they're lighting torches again. The judge cursed under his breath. Go, he said, through the cellar, out the back ridge. The girl grabbed the cowboy's coat. The judge reached for the lantern, and suddenly the window burst inward, shattering glass across the floor. A rider's silhouette filled the frame, torch in hand. And a voice roared, No one leaves! Glass scattered across the cabin floor like hard rain. The torch flame hissed as cold wind cut through the broken window. The rider crouched on the sill, boots dripping, face shadowed by the brim of his soaked hat. The girl froze behind the hearthstones. The cowboy lifted an arm in front of her. The rider snarled, Judge lied, no one leaves. The judge stepped forward, voice low and sharp. Put that torch out, the rider smirked. Not till I clear the debt. There is no debt, the judge said. The rider pointed the torch at the girl. There's always debt. The cowboy moved between them. You're not touching her. The rider chuckled darkly. You gonna stop me alone? He isn't alone, the judge said. Outside, riders stirred, boots scraping. Voices murmured. Then the deep voice barked, Hold formation, no one goes in unless I call. The rider on the sill hesitated. Even he feared that voice. The judge's tone dropped colder. You disobey me again, he said, and your badge is ash. The rider's jaw twitched. That badge feeds my family. Then use it right, the judge said. I am, the rider growled, protecting property. She is not property, the judge snapped. The rider spat rainwater onto the floor. Foreman said otherwise. The cowboy stepped closer. Foreman forged paper. Paper's all we got, the rider muttered. Not tonight, the judge answered. The girl whispered behind the stones. He works for the big man. The cowboy nodded. Yes. The rider shifted his torch hand, and the flame touched a loose curtain at the window edge. A spark leapt. The girl gasped. The cowboy lunged, yanking the fabric free before the fire caught. The torch swung wildly. The judge barked, Drop that torch. No, the rider shouted. She runs. Ranch loses face. Outside, the deep voice roared, Report, what's happening? The rider yelled back, She's trying to run. The girl flinched. I didn't move, she whispered. I know, the cowboy said. Chaos swelled outside. Boots hit the porch again. Metal scraped. Riders argued. The judge hissed, He's starting a stampede. The cowboy asked, What do we do? The judge answered, We end his story fast. The cowboy moved with sudden speed, grabbing the rider's wrist, twisting hard. The torch dropped, flame sputtering on the wet floor. The rider grunted, furious. You'll pay for that. You already cost enough, the cowboy replied. The rider swung a fist from his other hand. The cowboy blocked it with a shoulder, stumbling but steadying. The judge ordered each, Disarm him! I'm trying, the cowboy muttered. The rider slashed with a boot knife he drew from his belt. The girl cried out, No! The cowboy shoved the table between them, deflecting the strike. The knife clanged against iron. The table rocked. Papers scattered again. The judge reached for the knife handle, but the rider kicked him hard, sending the old man crashing into the wall. No, the girl gasped. The cowboy lunged to steady the judge before he fell. Outside, the deep voice growled louder. What's happening in there? The deputy shouted. "Stand down! Judge's orders!" "Nobody outranks ranch law," the deep voice roared. The rider pressed his knee through the window frame, trying to climb fully inside. "I'll take the girl," he said, "and end this." The girl backed into the stones, trembling. "Don't let him," the cowboy whispered. "Look at me." "Not him." Her eyes locked on his, her breath steadied. "We're leaving," he said quietly. "Now?" "Yes." The judge groaned, pushing himself upright. "Use the cellar," he said. "Take the ridge path." The cowboy nodded. "What about you?" "I'll stall them," the judge replied. "They'll kill you," the girl whispered. "No," the judge said. "They need me alive." The rider cursed, swinging the knife again. "You're not escaping." The cowboy grabbed the man's coat, yanked him forward, and slammed the window frame shut on his arm. The rider screamed, dropping the knife. The judge kicked the blade away with his boot. Outside, chaos erupted. "Boss, he's fighting!" "Pull the cabin down." "No, judge is inside." "Then drag him out too." The cowboy leaned over the hearth. "Go," he whispered. "Open the cellar." The girl crawled toward the trapdoor. Her fingers shook as she lifted the iron ring. The floor beneath them creaked. The cabin groaning under too many boots on the roof, too many bodies pushing the walls, too many intentions breaking the night apart. The judge whispered sharply, "Take her. Now, before they see." The cowboy guided the girl toward the opening. She hesitated at the dark hole. "It's deep. I'll be right behind you," he said. "You promise?" "Yes." She took one breath, then descended into the shadows. The cowboy turned, and the rider smashed through the window frame, crashing into the cabin with a roar. The judge shouted, "Go!" The cowboy sprinted for the cellar, but a second rider leapt through the broken roof, landing hard between him and the girl's escape path. The cabin shook. The deep voice outside bellowed, "Block the back!" "Nobody runs." The cowboy and the two intruders locked eyes in the dim firelight, and from below the floor the girl whispered, "Someone else is down here." The cowboy froze at the girl's whisper rising through the open floorboards. "Someone else is down here." He felt the blood drain from his face. The two riders blocking the cabin entrance stiffened, hearing it too. The judge staggered upright, clutching the wall. "What did she say?" the cowboy answered in a whisper. "She's not alone in the cellar." The rider who'd crashed through the window snarled, "Nobody's down there." The cowboy shook his head slowly. "She's never wrong." A low creak drifted up from the dark, soft, measured, like someone shifting weight on old boards. The girl's trembling voice came again. "He's breathing." The judge's eyes sharpened. "Hold your ground," he muttered. The rider hissed, "It's a trick." "No," the judge said. "She's telling truth." The cowboy took a step toward the cellar. One of the riders blocked him, pistol half drawn. "You stay put." The cowboy glared. "You aiming to shoot inside a judge's presence?" The rider's hand twitched. "Don't make me choose." The judge barked, "Holster that weapon." The rider hesitated, then shoved it back into the holster with a hiss. Below the floor, the girl whispered, "He's hurt." The cowboy lowered his voice. "Who?" "I don't know," she whispered. "He won't speak." Another tiny shift, a faint grunt, a man's grunt. The judge's face went stone cold. "There's only one way someone gets into a cellar unnoticed." The cowboy nodded grimly. "He came before the storm." "Or during it," the judge added. "Why hide?" the cowboy asked. The judge breathed out slowly. "To listen." The rider nearest the window spat. "Listen to what?" "Us," the judge said. "The contract talk, the lies, the debts." The cowboy tightened his grip on the iron poker. The man who had crashed through the roof growled, "Whoever's down there, he's ours." From the cellar, the girl whimpered, "He's moving, closer to the ladder." The cowboy crouched beside the trapdoor. "Stay behind the barrels," he whispered. "I can't see," she murmured. "You don't need to," he said. "Just move quiet." The riders circled uneasily, unsure where to focus. The cowboy, the judge, the cellar, or the crumbling roof above. One rider muttered, "This place is cursed." The judge snapped back, "No, this place is truth." The cowboy gripped the trap door ring. "Judge," he said softly, "if he's one of theirs." The judge cut him off. Then he'll answer to me. A thud rose from below. Something heavy had fallen, or someone had dropped to their knees. The girl gasped. He fainted. The cowboy's gut twisted. How do you know? He stopped breathing fast, she whispered. Now it's slow. The judge leaned closer. Hurt men don't hide without reason. Maybe he ran, the cowboy said. From who? The judge asked. The cabin fell still. Every rider inside and out listened. Then the girl whispered, barely a breath. He has a badge. The cowboy's heart slammed against his ribs. The judge's expression darkened like a storm cloud. A badge. She nodded. It's cold. Metal. By his chest. The rider by the window snarled, She's lying. No, the cowboy said. She isn't. The man who came through the roof growled, Which badge? The girl whispered, I don't know, but it's heavy. The judge's voice shifted, quiet as a knife sliding from a sheath. Open the trapdoor, he said. One rider grabbed the judge's arm. No, could be a trick. The judge shook him off. Only frightened men call truth a trick. The cowboy pulled the trapdoor up. The cellar yawned below, dark, damp, deep. Lantern light from the cabin spilled down the steps but died halfway. In the half-light, the girl crouched behind a barrel, eyes wide. Across from her, a man lay slumped near the woodpile, coat soaked, shoulder torn, badge glinting faintly on his chest. The judge inhaled sharply. That badge, the cowboy whispered. He's county law. No, the judge said. He outranks county. The riders stiffened. The girl trembled. He crawled in here, she whispered. He said, don't let them find me. The judge's voice dropped to a razor's edge. What else did he say? She swallowed. He said, Foreman lies. Every rider inside the cabin froze. The man with the folder turned pale as wet ash. He's delirious, he muttered. No, the judge said. He's witness. One rider swore under his breath. Another backed toward the door. The deep voice outside bellowed, Report! What's happening? The cowboy stood tall. We've got a wounded lawman. A what? The deep voice roared. A witness! The cowboy shouted. The porch erupted in shouts. Boots thundered. Horses pawed the earth. The judge leaned toward the cellar opening. Bring him up, he said. The cowboy nodded. He descended 2 steps, and the wounded man's eyes snapped open. Don't! He rasped. The cowboy froze. Don't what? Don't trust! A deafening gunshot cracked through the cabin wall. The cellar wall splintered above the girl's head. A second shot followed, closer. Outside, the deep voice roared, Kill the witness, now! The judge shouted, Get him out! The girl screamed, They're coming! Riders smashed against the back door. The roof sagged. The cabin shuddered. The wounded lawman grabbed the cowboy's sleeve with shaking fingers. There's more, he whispered. What? The cowboy begged. His voice broke through blood and dust. The contract, it wasn't about her. Gunpowder smoke drifted through the broken wall, thin and bitter. The girl ducked lower in the cellar, covering her ears. The cowboy shielded the wounded lawman with his body as another bullet punched through the boards above. The judge shouted, Hold your fire. Hold it? Outside, the deep voice answered, No orders from you anymore. The cowboy whispered to the girl, Stay down. Her breath shook. They want him dead, she whispered. Yes, he said. Why? He knows something. The wounded lawman clutched the cowboy's sleeve again. It wasn't about the girl, he rasped. The cowboy leaned closer. Then who? The man coughed, blood flecking his lip. You. The cowboy froze. The judge stiffened. Explain, he demanded. Outside, the riders yelled commands, scrambling to break the back door. The roof beams moaned under shifting weight. Boots kicked against the sagging frame. The wounded lawman struggled to speak. Foreman needed leverage. Leverage for what? The judge asked. The man's voice cracked. Loan. Winter deal. Judge never approved. The judge's eyes widened. He forged my seal. The lawman nodded weakly. And he forged yours? The cowboy felt his stomach drop. The judge cursed under his breath. That foreman used your debt. The girl whispered. To trap me. No, the lawman rasped. To trap him. A bullet slammed through the doorframe inches from the judge's head. The judge barked, "Get him up, now!" The cowboy hoisted the wounded man's arm over his shoulder. The girl scrambled up the cellar steps, clinging to the cowboy's coat, pulling herself out into the cabin. The judge pointed to the back corner where a narrow crawl space was half hidden behind old planks. "There's a cut-through," he said. "Goes under the ridge." The cowboy nodded. "Help me move him." The girl steadied the wounded man's other side with shaking hands. "You're safe," she whispered. He gave a faint nod. A heavy slam hit the back door. Wood cracked. Riders shouted. The deep voice bellowed, "Finish it before he escapes." The judge snarled, "They think you're the target." The cowboy tightened his jaw. "Doesn't matter. She goes first." The girl shook her head. "No, he's dying." "I'll carry him," the cowboy said. "You'll be slower," the judge warned. "I don't leave him," the cowboy answered. A bullet shattered the lantern, plunging the room into flickering firelight and darkness. The judge grabbed the last embering stick from the hearth. "This will guide you," he said. "What about you?" the cowboy asked. "I stall them," the judge replied. The girl grabbed his sleeve. "They'll kill you." The judge's voice softened. "Only if they believe the lie. I'm ending it." Outside, riders argued. One shouted, "He's escaping through the back." Another yelled, "Light the second torch." The deep voice roared, "Do it!" Flames glowed under the crack of the broken window. Orange light crept up the cabin wall. The girl gasped. "They'll burn us alive." "No," the cowboy said firmly. He shoved aside the planks covering the crawl space. Cold earth smell poured out. Dark, narrow, just big enough for one person at a time. The wounded lawman sagged. "Hurry," he whispered. The cowboy pulled him toward the opening, but the girl froze. "No," she whispered. "What?" the cowboy asked. She lifted a trembling finger toward the crawl space. "He's down there." The cowboy stiffened. "Who?" She swallowed hard. "Another rider. Waiting." A faint scrape echoed from the darkness. Metal on stone. Breathing. The judge swore under his breath. "They planned this." "A trap." The deep voice outside shouted again, "Fire the wall." Flames licked under the siding. Smoke rose through the slats. The cabin groaned. The cowboy lowered the wounded lawman to the floor. "You two stay low," he said. The girl grabbed his wrist. "Don't go in." He looked at her gently. "I won't let them take you." She shook her head. "No. That man in the crawl space, he's here for you." The judge stepped forward. "Why?" the girl whispered. "He said your name before I climbed up." The cowboy felt a cold knot twist in his chest. "He knows me." She nodded. "He said, 'Make him pay.'" A violent crash hit the back door, boards snapping, hinges screaming. The roof sagged again, smoke thickened. The judge shouted, "Under the bunk, there's another exit tunnel." The girl gasped. "I didn't know." "You weren't meant to," the judge muttered. The cowboy turned, but the wounded lawman clutched his coat again. "You must know the foreman didn't want the girl." The cowboy stared at him. "Then who?" The man coughed weakly. "He wanted you for what you carry." "What I carry?" the cowboy whispered. "Your coat pocket," the girl murmured. The cowboy reached inside. His fingers touched something, a folded piece of thick paper he did not put there. The judge's eyes widened. "Show me." Before the cowboy could unfold it, a burning beam collapsed, smashing the table, scattering the forged contract into sparks. The back door burst open, riders flooding in with torches and drawn guns. The deep voice thundered, "Take him first!" The back door exploded inward under the weight of the riders' charge. Flames curled along the broken planks, lighting the room in a harsh, uneven glow. Smoke rolled along the ceiling in thick waves. The girl pressed against the hearthstones, coughing, eyes wide with terror. The cowboy stepped in front of her, coat scorched, face streaked with ash, muscles locked in ready tension. The deep-voiced rider shoved into the cabin first. His torch burned high, dripping fire onto the floorboards. His eyes locked onto the cowboy like he'd been waiting years for this moment. "There!" he growled. "Take him!" Two riders with ropes surged forward. The judge raised a hand sharply. "Stop!" he barked. You touch him, you answer to me. But the deep voice sneered, You hold no law here, not tonight. The judge stepped toward them. This is obstruction. A rider shoved him back. No, he said. This is correction. The girl gasped softly. Don't let them, she whispered. The cowboy lowered his voice. I won't. One rider lunged with a rope. The cowboy deflected it with a broken beam from the table. The rope snapped past his shoulder, catching sparks from the fire. The wounded lawman groaned from the floor. Get the paper. The cowboy tightened his grip on the hidden folded sheet inside his coat. The deep voice caught the gesture. There, he shouted. His coat, that's what we came for. The girl's heart lurched. She whispered, You didn't know you carried it. No, he said. The judge hissed, Give it to me. Now. But the cowboy didn't move. He scanned the room, counting riders, exits, distances, angles, the way a man does when he knows time is running thin. The deep-voiced rider stepped forward. Hand it over, he demanded. No, the cowboy said. It isn't yours, the rider growled. It wasn't yours to plant, the cowboy answered. That single sentence froze the cabin. The judge stared at him. You believe they planted it? The cowboy nodded. They needed leverage. The rider snarled. So you talk too much, he lunged. The cowboy sidestepped, grabbing the rider's wrist and twisting hard. The torch dropped. Flames licked the floor as the cowboy kicked it aside, buying seconds. The girl cried out, Behind you! A second rider charged with a wooden club. The cowboy blocked the strike with his forearm, grunting from the impact, then shoved the man back into the wall. Outside, more riders dismounted fast. Boots thundered toward the broken window. The judge raised his voice. You're committing assault on law. The deep voice barked. Law doesn't matter if he's dead. The girl gasped. He said dead. The cowboy whispered. I heard. The wounded lawman struggled to sit up. They want that paper destroyed. The cowboy knelt briefly beside him. What is it? It's the real contract, the man whispered. For what? For you. The cowboy blinked. Me? The lawman nodded, breath shallow. Foreman arranged a trade. Not labor, land. The cabin shook as riders hit the walls again. Smoke thickened, stinging eyes and lungs. The judge yelled, We need to move, now. But the deep voice roared louder. Nobody leaves, especially him. Riders closed in from three sides. The girl reached for the cowboy's arm. Please, don't let them take you. He covered her hand with his. I'm here. A rider grabbed the girl's blanket, trying to pull her from behind the hearth. She screamed. The cowboy ripped the man away and slammed him to the floor with brutal force. The judge shouted, They'll swarm you. Move to the tunnel. A rider snarled. The tunnel's blocked. The cowboy scanned the room. He saw it too. Smoke pouring from under the bunk. Boots stomping outside the cabin wall. Shadows crossing the cracks. The back route was gone. The judge clenched his jaw. Then we fight to the front. Before he could move, the deep-voiced rider slammed his shoulder into the judge, pinning him against the wall. The judge choked. Get him out. His eyes shot toward the cowboy. The girl sobbed. They'll kill him. Yes, the cowboy whispered, unless we move. He pulled the folded paper from his coat. The deep-voiced rider spotted it instantly. There, he roared. That document dies with you. The girl's eyes widened in terror. What's in it? The cowboy whispered. Truth. Riders charged again. The cabin trembled. The wounded lawman, barely conscious, lifted his head. He rasped one final warning. Don't let them see the last page. The cowboy froze. The last page, he whispered. The judge's eyes widened. There's a second page. The lawman nodded weakly. It names the buyer. A gun cocked behind the cowboy. Cold metal touched the back of his neck. A rider hissed, and now we end it. The girl screamed. The judge shouted. Smoke choked the air, but the cowboy didn't move. He held the folded paper tight in his hand and slowly, deliberately, began to open it. As he unfolded the final flap, the judge went pale. The girl covered her mouth. Even the riders hesitated because the name written on the last page, in large, heavy strokes of ink, was one none of them expected. And the deep-voiced rider, seeing it, snarled, He wasn't supposed to know that. The cowboy stared at the last page, his breath tight, the room flickering with smoke and torchlight. The name written in bold, heavy strokes cut through the chaos like a knife. The big rider himself. The man with the deep voice, the man shouting orders outside, the man trying to burn the cabin down. The girl gasped. He bought you. The cowboy didn't answer. He couldn't. The deep-voiced rider inside the cabin snarled, "Shut that paper now!" The cowboy lifted his eyes. "No!" Riders froze, just for a heartbeat, shocked he dared to defy them so openly. The judge stepped forward, voice trembling with fury. "You bought a man, under forged seal, under my court." The deep-voiced rider spat. "You weren't meant to find out." The judge's fists shook. "How you trafficked people through falsified debt," the rider growled. "I collected what the ranch needed." The cowboy's grip tightened on the paper. "Why me?" "You owe land," the rider snapped. "You owe history." Smoke poured in from the broken wall. The cabin crackled as flames climbed the outer siding. The girl pressed her hand to her mouth. "They wanted you," she whispered. "For what?" the judge answered instead. "It wasn't labor they wanted, it was your land." The cowboy's eyes narrowed. "My land is worthless." "Not to them," the judge said. "It borders silver claims." The deep-voiced rider's jaw flexed. "You never deserved that ground." The wounded lawman coughed from the floor. "He wants the ridge, your ridge. Been planning years." A rider kicked him hard. "Shut up!" The cowboy lunged, blocking a second blow. "Touch him again," he growled, "and you won't walk out." The deep-voiced rider raised his gun. "You won't either." The girl crawled to the cowboy's side, gripping his coat. "Don't stand alone," she whispered. "I'm not," he said. The judge stepped beside them. "Neither am I." For a breath, the three of them formed a line, cowboy, girl, judge, against a room full of armed riders. Then the deep voice outside roared, "If he read it, kill him!" Riders surged forward. The judge shouted, "Protect the page!" The cowboy shoved the girl behind him, then tucked the paper inside his coat again. A rider swung a club. The cowboy blocked with his arm, teeth clenched from the impact. Another rider lunged with rope. The girl kicked the rope away, gasping for breath through the smoke. The judge grabbed a fallen rider's torch and smashed it against the floor, stamping out the flame to prevent the cabin from igniting further. Outside, chaos erupted. Horses screamed. Riders shouted. The storm built again over the ridge. The deep voice pushed through the doorway, massive shoulders filling the frame. "You read my name," he growled. The cowboy squared up. "Yes." The big man stepped fully inside, fire glow flickering across his scarred face. "You should have stayed in debt," he said. The cowboy lifted his chin. "You should have stayed honest." The big rider charged. He moved like a falling tree, heavy, unstoppable. But the cowboy slipped aside just enough, slamming his shoulder into the man's ribs. The impact shook the room. The girl screamed, "Behind you!" The cowboy spun, just as another rider aimed a pistol. The judge grabbed the man's wrist and slammed it against a beam, dislodging the gun. The big rider recovered, swinging wildly. His fist caught the cowboy's jaw. A brutal hit that sent him stumbling. The girl cried out, "Get up!" The cowboy wiped blood from his lip. "I'm up!" The big rider came again, but this time the cowboy ducked low and tackled him backward into the half-collapsed table. Wood splintered, papers scattered. The forged contract burned on the floor, its false ink curling in smoke. The girl pressed her back to the hearthstones, whispering, "Please win, please win." The big rider grabbed the cowboy's coat, ripping it open. The folded document fell out, landing between them. Both men lunged. The judge shouted, "Don't let him take it!" The cowboy reached first, but the big rider slammed his boot down on the paper, pinning it beneath thick leather. "It dies," the man snarled. The cowboy gripped his leg, trying to pry the boot off. The big rider raised his pistol. The judge drew in a breath to shout, but the girl screamed louder. "No!" She leapt from behind the hearth, grabbing the burning curtain pole and striking the rider's arm. The blow wasn't strong, but it was enough. The pistol fired into the ceiling instead of the cowboy's chest. The cowboy ripped the document free as the big rider staggered. Riders roared in fury. The judge yelled, "Run, both of you!" The girl grabbed the cowboy's hand. "Where?" "Anywhere not here," he shouted. But before they could run, the big rider lunged again, bloodied and enraged. He grabbed the girl's arm, hard, too hard. She cried out. The cowboy ripped her free, shoving the big rider back, but the man only laughed, breath ragged through smoke. "You think this ends tonight?" he growled. "You have no idea what that paper starts." The cowboy faced him squarely, chest heaving. "What does it start?" he demanded. The big rider smiled, a cold, awful smile. "It starts the war for the ridge." And as riders poured in from the broken door, torches blazing, the cabin ceiling finally gave way with a deafening crack. A beam collapsed. The fire roared. The screen filled with smoke and falling light as everything came crashing down. The cabin groaned as the final beams fell, scattering ash and firewood across the floor. Smoke burned eyes, and the storm outside roared in fury, rattling the broken windows. The cowboy dragged the girl toward the crawl space, keeping low beneath the sagging ceiling. "Stay close," he whispered. "I will," she gasped. "Don't let go," he said. "I won't," she replied. The wounded lawman struggled behind them, the cowboy supporting his weight. "You'll make it," he muttered. "I hope so," the man rasped. Outside, the deep-voiced riders hesitated at the collapse. The judge stepped past the fallen timber, pointing toward the ridge. "Follow the creek path," he ordered. "It's narrow. They won't swarm there." The cowboy nodded. "Ready?" he asked the girl. "Yes," she whispered. They crept through the tunnel, one step at a time, the rubble cracking beneath their feet. The night seemed alive with threats, each shadow a potential trap. A distant shout echoed. Boots clattered across broken boards. The deep-voiced rider cursed, realizing his quarry had vanished. The cowboy held the folded paper close to his chest, the final proof of truth and leverage. The girl glanced up at him. "We made it. For now," he said. Dawn broke over the ridge, storm clouds giving way to muted light. The creek sparkled beneath the first rays, offering a fragile promise of safety. The judge, leaning against a tree, nodded at them. "You've survived. But remember, the ridge holds secrets. People will come looking." The girl exhaled, relief and fear entwined. "I never thought—" "Don't think," the cowboy said softly. "Just move." They pressed on, footsteps quiet on wet earth. Every rustle, every drip of water reminded them the past wasn't done. The ridge had more than land at stake. It held justice, danger, and a choice, survive or fall. And as the first light touched the canyon walls, the cowboy glanced back once. The smoke of the cabin still lingered, drifting like memory across the valley. The girl squeezed his hand. "Together," she whispered. "Yes," he said. The journey wasn't over. The ridge awaited, full of secrets, threats, and the unspoken promise of truth. And they would face it, side by side. If you were on the edge of your seat with every twist, every shadow, and every secret unraveling, don't stop now. Click subscribe and turn on notifications to follow the full story. Experience every moment, every cliffhanger, every dramatic twist as the Apache girl and the cowboy navigate danger, deceit, and the secrets of the ridge. Share this story with friends who love tension, suspense, and cinematic storytelling that keeps you hooked from start to finish. Comment below with your theories. Who will rise? Who will fall? And how far will they go to survive the truth? Don't miss a second. Join us and see what happens next in this epic saga.